It was one of those exhausting Wednesdays, the kind that seemed to never end. I had just returned home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, my feet sore, my back stiff, and my mind weighed down with thoughts I couldn't quite shake off. Being a nurse had never been easy, but it had been especially hard ever since my husband, Steve, started working out of state 3 weeks at a time. That left me home alone to manage everything: our house, my job, and most importantly, his 15-year-old son, Jason. Jason and I had been trying to adjust to our new reality. I married Steve 2 years ago, and Jason moved in with us shortly after. At first, things were rocky. He missed his mom, and I was this unfamiliar presence trying to play stepmom in a house full of memories that weren't mine. But little by little, we started forming a connection. It was never perfect, but there was respect, even warmth. That evening, I kicked off my shoes, dropped my bag by the kitchen table, and flopped onto the living room couch with a deep sigh. Jason was already home from school, sitting at the dining table with his laptop and earbuds in. He noticed me come in but didn't say much, typical teenage behavior. After a few minutes, he walked over and stood behind the couch. I didn't look up. My eyes were closed, and I was still catching my breath from the day. Then I felt it, his fingers pressing gently into my shoulders. I opened one eye and looked up. "Rough day?" he asked softly. "You have no idea," I mumbled. "Mind if I try something?" "I watched a video on YouTube about how to loosen shoulder tension," he said. I gave a weak laugh. "If it works, I'll pay you in cookies." Jason chuckled and began gently pressing his thumbs into the knots at the base of my neck. To my surprise, it actually felt good, better than good. I had spent so much time caring for others, I had forgotten what it was like to be cared for, even in small ways. Minutes passed. His movements were cautious, respectful, clearly just trying to help. I could feel the sincerity in the way he was trying not to hurt me. "You've got, rocks under your skin," he said, genuinely concerned. "Welcome to adulthood, kid," I muttered. We both laughed. Then, after a long pause, he asked, "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" I turned my head slightly, curious but cautious. "Sure." He took a deep breath. "Do you think I'm hard to live with?" The question caught me off guard. I sat up a little straighter and turned to look at him. His eyes were searching mine, looking for something, maybe reassurance, maybe honesty. I saw a flicker of vulnerability there, the kind most teenagers hide behind sarcasm or headphones. "No," I said gently. "I think you're trying your best. And I know it's not easy, especially with your dad gone so much." Jason looked down, rubbing his hands together. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the way. Like you'd be happier if it were just you and Dad." His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were so full of self-doubt. I moved over and patted the couch beside me. He hesitated, then sat down. "Jason, I won't pretend that blending a family is easy. But I never once thought of you as being in the way. You're part of this family, not some extra piece. And I know I'm not your mom, but I care about you. A lot." He looked at me, his eyes misting just slightly. "You mean that?" Every word. There was a long silence, not awkward, but full of unspoken emotions being sorted out. Then he smiled, a real, genuine smile I hadn't seen in a while. "Thanks," he said. I ruffled his hair and tried to lighten the mood. "So, about that massage technique. You said you learned that on YouTube?" He laughed. "Yeah, but the guy in the video had actual muscles. I think I'm just poking bones at this point." We both burst out laughing, and for a moment, the weight of the day lifted. Later that night, I was making dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and garlic bread. Jason hovered nearby, helping by setting the table and even chopping some vegetables without being asked. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. I knew he was trying. As we sat down to eat, he looked up and said, "You know, I used to hate garlic bread, but now it's my favorite. Weird, right?" I smiled. Taste buds change, just like people do. That night, while I was tucking myself into bed, I thought about what had happened. The massage, the question, the way he looked at me when I told him he mattered. I realized then that our relationship had taken a turn. He wasn't just my stepson. He was someone who trusted me, confided in me, and wanted to be seen. Days turned into weeks, and Jason continued to surprise me. He started leaving his room more often, joining me in the kitchen, asking how my day was, offering to help with groceries. Sometimes we'd watch a movie together or argue over the best pizza topping. The distance that once sat like a wall between us had turned into a bridge we were both learning to walk across. Then one Saturday morning, while we were sitting on the porch drinking hot chocolate, he said, "Hey, remember that night I gave you a shoulder massage?" I smiled. Of course. That night, something changed for me. I stopped seeing you as someone who married my dad and started seeing you as someone who really sees me. My throat tightened. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I do see you, Jason. And I always will. Steve returned from his job a few days later, and when he walked in the door, he found Jason and me sitting at the dining table doing a puzzle together. He blinked a few times, surprised by the sight. "Did I walk into the wrong house?" he joked. Jason grinned. "Nope. Just bonding with my awesome stepmom." Steve raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "Well, it's about time." We all laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it felt like a complete family. There was no tension, no pretending, just honesty, growth, and connection. That night, while I lay in bed beside Steve, he whispered, "Thank you for being patient with him." And with me. I kissed his shoulder and replied, "It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it." As sleep took over, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. Not because life was perfect, but because we were all finally starting to understand one another. And that, in the end, changed everything.